Have you ever been in a battle of wills with a little child? Picture parent in one corner, toddler in the other. And the question about who's going to win usually boils down to who's going to outlast their opponent. Have you ever been in one of those situations where the child is throwing a temper tantrum and you just don't know if you have the endurance to outlast them? It's which one's going to give in, right? And so often children know, and if they don't learn it early, they're going to hold on to it late, that if I can just keep on whining, I have a good chance of winning. Whine to win. Yep, that's the idea there. And if I could just keep hammering it down and, tears or please or begging or, again, tantrums, eventually my parents give in. They let me win. Ha ha ha. Well, I guess we could make a parable of the importunate toddler out of that. But instead, let's talk about a parable of the importunate widow. Because the widow realizes she has to whine to win. It's a weird parable. Okay? If you look at section 101, look at verse 81. Okay? Now, unto what shall I liken the children of Zion? So what am I going to compare them to? Interesting question, because he's just taught a very long parable about the children of Zion. So he's done some likening already, but he's got a little more likening to do before he's done. He says, I will liken them unto the parable of the woman and the unjust judge. For men ought always to pray and not to faint, which saith, and then he tells the parable. Now, here he refers to it as the parable of the unjust judge, but it's also called the parable of the importunate widow, because the widow is importuning. She's begging, and she deserves what she's begging for. It's called justice. Now, whose job is it to make sure justice is exercised, is guaranteed? It's the judge. Okay, that judge is supposed to decide, yes, that what's happened to you is completely unjust. You deserve this kind of benefit instead. Okay? Well, in the parable, if you go back, this is in Luke chapter 18. It's a one and done parable. Matthew doesn't do it. Mark doesn't mention it. It's only in Luke. And it's one of the few parables where Jesus tells the moral of the story before he tells the story. He says, I'm going to tell you a story with this lesson from the start. Pray always and do not faint. And then he tells the story, just like he's done here in section 101. Let me tell you something about praying always and not fainting. Here's the parable. And he tells it. And it's this woman, this widow that's like, Judge, this is wrong. I've been wrong. Please write this. And he's like, I don't care about your story. I don't really even care about justice. I'm in the judge seat for me. What kind of a judge is that? Not wise, not good. But we can't oust this guy. So what's the poor widow going to do? She's going to keep on asking. She's begging, she's importuning, and finally, eventually, the judge decides to give in. Not out of a sense of justice for her, but out of a sense of self-preservation for himself. I'm so sick and tired of this woman whining at me. Fine, have it your way. Toddlers have a better grasp of that parable than we realize. Now, the woman wasn't whining. That's not fair. But she was importuning for something that she deserved from the start. And so what's the Lord hinting at? That's the irony. He's the judge in this story, but he's not like that judge. He's a truly just judge from start to finish, which then makes us wonder, then why don't you always help us the first time we ask? That's the question. And here's these saints praying, importuning, but God has not yet redeemed Zion. He hasn't yet come through for them the way they expected. So what do we do? Look at verse 85 through 89. After he tells the parable, he then gives the explanation. Thus will I liken the children of Zion. Let them importune at the feet of the judge, and if he heed them not, let them importune at the feet of the governor. Take it up a notch. And if the governor heed them not, well, you know what to do next. Let them importune at the feet of the president. Take it up still another notch. Now, what's above that? There's the highest executive in America. Well, is it? Here's one more step. If the president heed them not, then will the Lord arise. You've been importuning him the whole way through, right? He definitely outranks I mean, commander-in-chief, yeah, I'll show you one that outranks you. The Lord will arise and come forth out of his hiding place, and in his fury vex the nation. Makes me wonder what part the Civil War played in all of this. Because the judge in Jackson County did nothing to help the saints get back on their land. They went to the governor, and the governor did nothing to help them get back on their land. They go to the president of the United States, and the president says that your cause is just. How's that for a just judge? But what does he say? But I can do nothing for you. Part of that was self-serving. If I help you, I've lost the vote of the Missourians. But part of it was actually legitimate. I'm a federal officer, and the First Amendment only binds the federal government. It's not going to be post-Civil War that federal law is going to start to be applied to state law. Up until that point, states were kind of could do their own thing, and Missouri sadly was. So what do? We have exhausted all of our means of appeal, and there's no one left to importune except God. Well, leave it in his hands. And keep praying that people will change. The way he says it in verse 92, pray ye, therefore, that their ears may be opened unto your cries. God's ears are always open, but that judge, that governor, that president, pray that they'll be softened, that I may be merciful unto them, that these things may not come upon them. Interesting. It's not just so I can be merciful to you, saints. I want to be merciful to the judge and the governor and the president. I don't want to vex the nation. But the nation better stop vexing you. They better start living justly, or they'll face some injustices that will bring them to their knees. The Lord goes on and says, what I have said unto you must needs be, that all men may be left without excuse, that wise men and rulers may hear and know that which they have never considered, that I may proceed to bring to pass my act, my strange act, and perform my work, my strange work, that men may discern between the righteous and the wicked, saith your God. We're going to be able to discern some things, all right. We're going to be able to see who's on whose side. The Lord's side, the enemies, the saints' side, others. Who's attained higher moral ground? Will anyone join them? Whose side are judges on and governors on and presidents on? You understand? The Lord wants us to see, or actually, the Lord wants to see how we will react to the strange and marvelous things that he's doing. His strange act, his strange work, the restoration of his people. It's not going to be done the world's way. It's going to be done God's way. And so we need to become godly ourselves. In fact, I think there we can end this parable with the way the Lord ends the parable in Luke. He doesn't do it here in section 101. It's almost like he's assuming or hoping that we know the original. Because how does that parable end? Again, it ends with good news that the judge eventually comes through for the widow. But when you're wrestling with the question of, but why did it take so long? Why, if it was just from the start, why didn't God come through for me from the start? This is where the Lord ends that parable with this question. When the Son of Man returns, will he find faith on the earth? Now, many of you know that that's one of my favorite questions in all of Scripture. I want that to be answered with a resounding yes. That's why I do what I do. I want there to be faith. You can cherry pick that verse, take it completely out of context, and just savor it. When the Son of Man returns, will he find faith on the earth? Beautiful question. But in context, it's mind-blowing. He uses that question as his conclusion to the parable of the importunate widow, the unjust judge, which explains everything. Why doesn't justice come through from the start? because when Christ returns, he wants to find faith here. And what develops faith? Hard things. Things that stretch us, things that force us to our knees, things that leave us wondering, where's God in all of this? And then holding out hope that he's still there. You understand why sometimes it seems like God is not coming through for us? Why sometimes the Lord's will isn't done on earth? Because he wants to give us a chance to develop faith. Faith required to build Zion. Faith required to become Zion. So that when Christ returns, we'll have faith within that he can recognize. Faith that he's helped us develop by not helping us with every specific thing along the way. That's a tough one. That's one worth wrestling with. So as we are begging God and anyone else for things we most need, realize what we really most need is faith. And the Lord is helping us develop it.